maybe 5 minutes into the stream that my mic was not plugged in and that no audio was coming from me. So I'm just going to start over. This is the Sausage Sports Club weekly update. This is where I talk about what I did this week, what progressed on the game, what went slower than I expected, and just general progress, how I'm feeling about it. The reason I want to do this is I think it could be helpful for new developers or hobbyists or anybody interested in seeing how a commercial game is made. Not from scratch. I'm not doing like crazy Handmade Hero stuff. I'm using Unity. I'm using some asset store plugins when it makes sense to do that. But I think it's still valuable to see like what is a commercial game, how does it get made, what's the thought process, what's the weekly, what happens every week, stuff like that. Of course, there's like the marketing side of I need to talk about the game or people won't know about it. And then the other thing is in the future it will be nice to look back on this game and look back on how I approach making games and just see how I've grown or see that I have become worse and that now is my peak. Yeah, Dave, I'm glad you can hear me now. So that's the idea of this stream. That said, we can just get into it. This week was a lot more productive than last week. As I've been doing for the last couple weeks, I'm working towards kind of a fully playable first pass of the game, which I can then start iterating on and improving as I get close to launch. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm hoping in the next week, to get there and to have some dev friends just play it and give me their feedback and just totally shit on it so that I can start improving it. And that involves, the biggest thing that involves is working on adventure mode, making it have the multiple days of a season. Each day there's like several quests you can do, and then once you finish the quest of that day, then you move on to the next day. And the quests are randomized such that there's a big pool of quests, and each day a few quests are chosen for the day, and then you do the quests. So every time you play adventure mode, it's a little bit different, and I'm hoping that I will have more quests than days in the adventure mode. So if you play multiple times, you're going to get some new quests that you haven't seen before. And then certainly the days will not feel the same because there will be different quests in combinations in one day, and they'll be located in different parts of the overworld. Anyway, I'm working towards getting all this functionality done, and we can talk about specifically what I did. So first off, the biggest thing that happened this week is I kind of hit a wall of if I'm going to build all the rest of these quests, if I'm going to build enough quests to have a playable thing, I need to have a good workflow. I need to have a solid plan if I'm going to do it, and I need to know how long it takes, what it looks like to make quests. For the last, not for the whole month, but for some portion of the last month, I worked on a quest editor, which is like a graph of nodes, which has a lot of different functions in it, basically of like operating on data. So like I can say at one point in the quest, like tell this NPC that they have this dialogue when you talk to them, and then if there's a dialogue option, like set some key value pair based on the way I respond, and then later I can have like a branch in the quest editor. If like I answered one way, we go along one path of nodes, and if we answered the other way, we go along the other path of nodes. So it was really cool to work on. It was like an interesting technical problem. I hadn't worked with that type of editor extension in Unity before. It was just like a whole custom window. It was all the data was held in scriptable objects, and when you open the window, it would basically all get serialized into this window manually, and it was an interesting problem. It taught me things I didn't know. So I don't think it was a waste, but or I don't think it was a total waste, but it was somewhat a waste because I'm not going to use it. And I spent maybe a full week on it. Hey, Watson. So getting into why I canceled it, why I canned that thing specifically, it knowing that I needed to decide, okay, this is how I'm gonna set up my workflow for making quests. I need to know how long it's gonna take. I need to know what it's gonna look like. I don't want to be, and specifically, I didn't want to be working on this tool as I was going and wasting more time on it. So it was that upkeep and maintenance and extensions of that tool to support what my workflow needed to be was the scariest part. And my other option was to just manually write code for each quest, like have a some utility functions like play dialogue or play match or run to location on the map and all this stuff, and just manually code it. When I started on the quest editor, I didn't want to do that because it sounded like a bad way to iterate on quests, which inherently involve a lot of writing and little tweaks, and it just like writing code and changing code and having things be like hard coded seems like not a great workflow. But this node graph thing, the quest editor thing, ended up being like, basically I would have to do a bunch of code anyway, but the code was on like a tool instead of coding on the data, on the flow of data, if that makes sense. And so I was still doing the same amount of coding I would be doing or more, but I also had to like have this separate workflow of like editing the content, like creating and editing the content. So the workflow of editing the data, the content specifically, was better, but I also had all this like maintenance of like upkeeping the tool and like improving it, and often I would want things that I would then investigate how to do it, and I was like, oh, that's going to take me like 2 days, and I need to learn how to do some things. So I decided it was time to just scrap it and do full code. And I probably should have tried doing that at the start before making the quest editor, because it actually, the code version is actually like pretty easy to set up quests, and it's quick, and a lot of the code is reusable, so it's just a better decision overall. So that took like maybe 2 days to like root out all the quest editor stuff and like rework all of the quest editing workflow to just be code driven. So now I have that system. I know how it works. I have a few example quests. I even got kind of a separate branch of quests, which I'm calling challenges, which may or may not be the appropriate name, but the idea is that instead of like the story-driven quests where you're going to be set in a situation where you're going to see two characters have a conflict, and then you're going to help them come to a resolution somehow, which is, I think the most interesting thing about the game is the characters and their like silliness. And so if there's going to be any kind of interesting story to this game, it's not going to be like a long narrative, like Uncharted or something like that. It's going to be like character drama. Like, I want to know more about the frog, or about the flamingo, or about Scout, or whatever. And I know that's what people care about, and so I'm just trying to like set up situations where you'll learn things about them through their decisions on like their interactions with each other. So I'm trying to like play on that. And anyway, that's the story kind of quest where that conflict of characters is happening, and then the challenge kind of quest is where you're doing something different. It's kind of like in the game it will feel like a one-off. Like, I might find a character standing by the soccer field or some soccer goals in the overworld, and say like, and this dude's really into training and like staying really focused and being the best at sports and everything, and so you'll walk up to them and they'll say, hey, you need to like train up, let's do some do some soccer practice. How many soccer goals can you hit in 30 seconds or something? And then you just hit soccer goals, and he'll respond to how you do. If you do poorly, he'll say, "You suck. Like come back tomorrow or whatever, and we'll practice some more." If you do really well, he'll be like, "Wow, I'm not even that good. You must practice a lot." And so that's another way of revealing some aspect of their character, but it's more like a fun one-off challenge for you to do. Another example that's less of a challenge is one of the characters in the game likes hip hop, likes to make up raps and rhymes and stuff, and so that challenge quest is like a Mad Lib type of game where they say, "I'm gonna write a rap. Let's work together. Like you pick from some different ideas, and then I'll make those into a rap." And that one's been a little hard to write, but I think it's gonna turn out cool. I started with just like nouns and adjectives and verbs, and it's all of the words always rhyme and kind of are the same idea. So I don't want to get too much into it, but so that's another kind of thing I'm working on with this challenge quest. Let's see, what's next? So some of the week, this is something we can look at the stream for, the video for. I was, in testing these quests, I was running into some frustrations of debugging was pretty slow because at first the quests were randomly spawned. I just got like a big list of quests. I can choose a few per day, and then spawns them into the world. So as you can see over here on the right, I've got like these sausage soccer prefs. That was the code name of the game originally. But I have, let's do adventure. So I have this quest overrides block, and I can define the quests I want to be spawned this day specifically. And so if I'm trying to test one specific quest, I could just pick from this. Part of that also, this might have been something I did last week, but I maintain an enum of all the quests in the game, which is like a hard-coded way to reference any quest in the game. But instead of manually editing this, I generate it with a tool, and this tool goes through my hierarchy of folders and says, "Oh, I see this is your folder that's challenge quests. I'll go through all of these and we'll add those to the enum of quests as challenge quests. Same with story." And that's why I've got all these here, and these match up. And that the reason I do that is so that I can do this kind of thing where in the inspector I can have like a drop-down list of quests I want to pick. I think I'm only using it here right now, but you can see how that would be pretty useful to be able to like select quest data that's like in prefabs or whatever. So for debugging purposes, I had this thing where I can specify what quests I want to have happen that day. I also, let's go into Overworld, start her up. So I was getting frustrated with this workflow of the quest, of having to like spawn in, figure out what quest there was, and then walk all the way over to the quest. Oh, that's weird. Oh, I've got a million controllers plugged in. Let me unplug some of these. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but I've got 8 controllers plugged into my computer right now. I'm making a build for an event the game is going to be shown at in the UK, actually. I'm not going to be able to go, but gonna get built for me. Where is my Xbox One? Okay. Alright. So anyway, yeah, I was getting frustrated with this workflow of I spawn into the overworld, and I land, and I have to like go into scene view and zoom out to see what quests have even spawned, just like looking around to see what characters have spawned, and then once I know where they are, I have to go find them. What is going on? What is that? Oh, there's like a quest trigger. I know what that is. Let's delete that for now. I was working on setting up zones which will play ambient sound. That was a new thing I was working on 2 days ago, I think. And apparently I made them colliders, not triggers, and so the character was getting resolved there. Okay, so as I've said twice already, I was tired of that workflow of spawning in, trying to figure out what quest I needed to do, what was spawned, if I needed to restart the game until I found the quests I wanted. And then once I knew that the quest I wanted was in the level, I had to just like walk across the whole map, potentially, to like actually get to the quest. So the other debug thing I added was this debug camera. I already had the debug camera, but now I can do this where I fly it and then I hit space and it flies my dude over, and I hit toggle button again, and now I can like move around again. And this works on a controller as well. So if I was showing the game to somebody at a convention or something, I could use the same debug controls but on a controller. It's pretty useful. There's a cannon. I can work on that this week. So this was cool. I can also hold the left trigger to like zoom really fast. That's fun. Another thing I did this week that you can see here is this UI. You can't see my hand, but this off-screen indicator there. It looked super ugly before, and I finally hated it enough to deal with it. Okay, so that's debug workflow stuff, that camera, and inspector stuff. What else did we do this week? So I did a little bit of changes to input in general in the game. For one, the character's input was kind of, it wasn't exactly digital, but it was basically like if your stick was moving in a direction, you would accelerate until you were at full speed, and then you keep going at full speed, and it didn't matter how far your stick was tilted, the max speed was always the same. So if I pushed down like 1/10 on the stick, or halfway on the stick, my character would end up going the same speed, but they would just get there more slowly. And that obviously like isn't intuitively how a character should be controlled. And I just didn't really care that much until recently, and so I changed that so I can like walk more slowly now. There's still a kink to be worked out of like the transition from slow walking to idle is like a little jittery. So if you're holding the stick very, very lightly, you'll get that like weird jitter. But nobody really does that when they play. So it's not like a super high priority for me to fix right now. It is going to be fixed before launch, but not quite yet. The other input thing I changed is for AI, for the bots in the game. They had that same idea of any input they give ends up with them moving a fixed speed, so they can't follow. If they're following an actor, if they're following a player, or like chasing something, they can't move slowly, and that kind of makes them super crazy feeling, which is sometimes good, but not always what you want. So I dialed that back a bit, so they can actually you can actually feed them values that will make them move a little bit more slowly towards something. Also, let's find an NPC. I can fly over to one. Okay. So you can see here that NPCs kind of, their heads swing kind of a reasonable speed. It's like what you might expect of a sausage animal to like flop around. That quest is broken. Sick. Earlier this week, they flopped their heads super fast and like crazy, and it was all on or off. It was like digital basically, where if they were flopping at all, they were trying to like flop all the way over, which was funny. And when I'm showing a convention, that's fine, or when I'm debug testing, that's fine. But when you're trying to like talk to a character and they're just like wagging all the way over each time super fast, that's like really distracting and not appropriate for the situation most of the time. And that was caused by the input thing I talked about earlier, where it was sort of digital, where if they were like halfway, their input would like accelerate all the way up. It would just do it more slowly. So the acceleration to max would be slow, but max would still be the same speed or the same sideways force if we're talking about the heads. So I made that better. This also applies to the main character, or to the player character, where previously if you moved your head, if you like held the right stick a little bit to the side, you would always like flop all the way over, which is not what you want, or isn't what I expect at least. So worked on that a bit. I also added some keybinds to speed up time and slow down time. I actually hadn't tried this in the forest. It's pretty cool to see everything. See everything going like crazy speed. That's fun. That was another keybind. So as I mentioned before, I'm sending the game to a showcase in the UK next week. The last I would say the last 2 full days was me just like setting up the build as it would be at the show and just testing stuff and thinking like what can I improve, what can I make better for the show. A lot of it is small stuff. Like previously in show builds, from if nobody's playing the game yet and the game's just sitting on a TV or whatever at the show, after 10 seconds or something, the game goes into attract mode, which is just like a game starts with all AI and they all just play or whatever. Previously, this would always load into one specified level, and it would always do that. And so if the game is ever in attract mode, it would always be in the bug museum specifically, and that's less exciting to watch. And somebody who's not excited by the bug museum might be excited by the aquarium because it's got that big squid, going on. So I just made that a random selection at the start of the mode. So there's little stuff like that, and there actually ended up being a lot of stuff like that, like little touches that make the game feel a lot better. Let's go to paint mode for another one of those. Bug museum, paintball. Let's do 3. Another little touch which I've wanted to do for a long time, but I just haven't gotten around to, is adding particle effects to paint mode to just make it feel more like splashy and more like painty. It's probably going to be a little bit slow because I'm streaming and playing, and I've got Maya and Photoshop and a bunch of stuff open. Let's max it. Okay, it's not too bad. Yeah, but you can see the characters drop particles in their paint color in front of and behind wherever they're running, and the ball does as well. And these could use some further tweaking even, but it goes a long way to make it feel more like I'm painting and like doing something which is liquidy, like viscous liquid. So that's fun to do. I finally just bit the bullet and just like drew a bunch of sprites, like a bunch of sprite sheets in Photoshop. What's next? What else did I do? I added another debug tool to allow me to set what characters and skins and arenas are unlocked when you start playing. That's useful for debugging if I want to specifically see like some character that's unlocked later in the game, and I just want to load straight to them. That's good. Or if I want to give somebody a build to test and I want to just like start them with like everything in the game unlocked, or for like a show build, I want them to start with everything in the game unlocked so they can just play it. They don't want to worry about unlocks. Plus adventure mode isn't available yet, so you're not really going to like have the same flow of progression or unlocks like I want. Sorry if this is kind of just like rambling in a bunch of directions. That's just kind of the nature of my work this week because of the show build coming up, and because the adventure mode is kind of like this big slog of a task where I just have to like code 30 quests or whatever. It's just like an intimidating task that to avoid starting I can just do all of these ancillary things. So that's kind of what I did, what I've been doing. This one's dumb. I shouldn't have spent my time on this, but for the I guess I should have done this earlier even, but now it's done anyway. The feedback form for the backer beta previously was like not great UX. Like you had to like tab through these to like fill out your feedback form. This is a feedback form that people in the beta can use to send notes directly to my Trello, and it takes a screenshot of the game whenever they hit send. And they can leave their email and description and whatever. This is inspired by. I got the base of this from Trinket, who I think was inspired by Wheelchair working on Manifold Garden. But this has already been super useful, even though it was like half broken in the beta build for a while. That's actually how I found out it was broken, is somebody like mucked their way through it to submit a feedback form saying the feedback form is hard to use. So that's all improved now. There's a bunch of bug fixes this week that I'm not going to get into. I'm looking at my commit log, if that's on my other monitor, if that's not clear. I would show it, but there's some secret stuff in there, so I can't. Some save stuff. Mention that. Human. Talk about that. Oh man, this is a small thing, but for probably the last month, there's been these two sounds in the game that are just not leveled at all. So if I would ever try to show somebody something in the game, or if I'm testing it myself with audio on, which if you make games you'll know that you never play the game with audio on unless you're specifically like implementing audio. But there's these two sounds in the game. One is the countdown sound, and you start a match. It's like 3, 2, 1, like the beeps, like similar to Mario Kart, and you get down to the final countdown. There's that one, and then there's like a cheer sound that happens a bunch in the UI when stuff is confirmed or when you score a goal. Those two sounds are like 3 times as loud as everything else in the game. So I would like adjust my volume to like get the music to sound right and acceptable volume, and then the fucking countdown would just like beep insanely loud, annoying everybody. And I finally fixed those, even though it was like a 1-second fix. And I feel very good about it. It makes me very happy that those are fixed. There's a bunch of little UI stuff, like, let's look at it actually. Demo. So implementing my character select screen, which is inspired by Smash. It's got, I'm gonna mute audio. It's got the cursor token thing like Smash, and that's maybe the most Smash-like thing about it. But anyway, implementing this menu, I kind of followed Smash's examples in the interactions of like the token and what you expect to happen and everything. But there have been things that make sense for Smash but don't make sense in this game. Like in Smash, I believe you hold A down to move around the pog, and when you let go of it, that's when you drop it. In this, I would say my audience in general is more casual than Smash is, even though Smash is like a really easy to play, easy to pick up kind of game. So I would show it at conventions and stuff, and people who aren't familiar with games at all, who are like 6 or who've never played a game in their life or haven't played a game since they were 6 kind of thing, they pick up the game, and like the first time I did it, you would spawn in, the pog would be on your controller, and people would start moving around their cursor, and then they would just never realize that there's a pog. So I changed that. I started it so that you start with the pog in your hand already, so that eventually you'll realize if you hit A, you'll like see that you dropped it. Another thing is people previously, if I hit B while moving my cursor around, you would just like completely back out your character, and like your dude would disappear completely like that. And that's not what people expected. Several people told me that they wanted the pog to like move to their hand if they hit B, and that makes sense. I'm pretty sure that's what Smash does, and that feels right to me. So I switched to that. And what else is different on this menu? Oh, this is interesting. So if in Sausage, there's each skin can only be used by one player at a time. A skin is like a character palette, basically, like a texture swap. And there are only so many that you have unlocked or that exist in the game at all. So like Jaws here has 2, and if another pog tries to move onto that square, there's not enough skin, so you can't do it. People, as far as I've seen, like, even if they don't understand what's happening, they know to not do this. They see that it doesn't work, even if they don't understand why necessarily. So that's an interesting thing specific to this game I had to work on. Okay. So that's UX stuff. Okay, this is an interesting thing. as you saw on that character select screen, there's a bunch of character portraits. It's just like the face of the skin of your dude. So you got the face here. If I hit Y or I click on the thing, you can see that Peter changes, or Scout changes. That'll be more obvious. So there are multiple skin options. And now that there are so many characters in the game, it gets really tedious to like make all these characters into UI portraits, because it's basically you have to like take a screenshot, go into Photoshop. If your screenshot tool doesn't take a transparent background, then you have to cut it out and like crop it correctly to fit and whatever. So once I got to like 10 characters, I was like, I am never doing that again, because that just took so long. So I made a tool for it. Let me show you that. Managers. Turn off this stuff. And I just made this today, like, well, I made it a while ago, but I improved it a little bit today and used it today, so it's fresh in my mind. Resources. So the idea is that you set up a shot with, you could do this with anything, but I usually use a prefab of the character. Whoops. Just to like see for real what it's gonna look like. Let's do Spectre. Okay, so I set up my shot. That's a dopey looking shot. Let's do a silly one. Okay, so that one's fun. Global. Okay, so that one's silly. The idea is you set up your shot, you select the thing that it's pointing at, and then you go into the My Like Utils menu here, and you do screenshot characters. Boom. And then the camera, oh wait. It's probably going to take a bunch of bad images that are like not transparent fully. That is in sausage. Okay, here we go. This actually look okay. Oh, this is actually way more than I bargained for. Is this doing like everybody forever? That's not what I want. Oh, you can't see what I'm looking at. So this is, I accidentally clicked the wrong button, and now it's taking screenshots of every single character with every single hat, with every skin. So it's gonna be like hundreds, which is silly. But that's a cool tool for automation. And then in Photoshop, I made an action, which is an automated process, to specifically crop those to the size I wanted. Okay, that's all the stuff I worked on this week. I feel pretty good about process. It's feeling like the game is coming together, and the things I'm working on are like iterating on what I know the game to be instead of trying to figure out what the game is, which is relatively new. I've had a pretty good idea about what the game is about, like what the player experience is for a while, but it's, until pretty recently, it's been in my head, and it's still, to some extent, it's still in my head. Like, adventure mode is still not proven out yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. But these things I've been working on, the paint, VFX, and these debug tools, and improving UX in the UI, and the off-screen indicator that I mentioned, like, improving that visually is like, okay, I know what this stuff is. I know what my visual style is. I know what the UI looks like. I know what the like feel of the game is, so I can just do stuff. And that's a good feeling. I'm excited for in a month to be hopefully like there 100% there with the quest and adventure mode stuff. If by then I'm really confident, like I know what it is and I know what's fun about it, then I'll be feeling pretty good for launch, which is not too long after that. Another couple months, another month or so after that. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if anybody's in chat right now, but wait, there's people. So that's where I'm at. That's where the game's at. That's what I've been doing this week. If you have any questions, now is a good time for that. Otherwise, hey Fudge.